ahead, honey.
Are we live?
We're live. We are live.
We are live. Hey, it's Eric and Rebecca.
Hi.
This is the Galveston Bay Fishing Show, and we are broadcasting live from Eagle Point Fishing Camp.
It's the couples edition today.
The couples edition. David is out today. Wendy is out. My dad, Johnny Valentino, is out.
He's working on a project.
So we're going as a tandem today.
That's right. So we are busy, busy, busy. I'm going to pull up our live feed right now. We are talking about something that I seem to feel like happens a lot this time of year. And it's every single time I am down at the marina. Everybody, like, you could be having a conversation with them and then everyone just starts looking out the window and not paying attention to what I'm saying. And then they always say, look, the birds are working. And all of a sudden everyone's paying attention to the birds that are working instead of what I'm saying. But there's a good reason for that.
So we're going to talk about the birds. The birds are working, and normally the birds start working in a big way in the fall. And they started working at least off the point and in and around the point quite a bit 2 weeks ago. And then this last weekend, Captain Jason Garcia, he caught 25 trout.
Whew.
And he caught those all under the birds out here in front of Eagle Point. And I have a picture of the fish that he caught, but the picture was so bad that we're not going to.
And we gave Jason a lot of crap about that.
We gave Jason a very hard time about a picture of some fish in a cooler. That's not something that I show people.
Yeah, we want the fish to look nice. We want to see the people that were out fishing. We want to see a smile on their face. We want it to be a pretty picture. And Jason will never take a picture of fish in a cooler again. So when we're talking about fishing the birds, like, what is bringing on all of the birds, Eric? Kind of talk about that.
Well, back up one sec. Just
yeah.
Remind people that to send you any message if they want us to cover something. If we can, we will.
Yeah, guys, if you want to send in a message, you are more than welcome. In fact, I will even put a note in here so that we can remind people to do that. Okay, I think I can't do that. So we're good. All right, continue. Tell me about what it means. What's going on with all these birds?
So look, what's going on right now is when you have the beginning of fall, the shrimp and bait fish will have a migration, and as the bait fish and shrimp migrate out of the marsh and they're migrating through Galveston Bay, you will have an increased population, and that combined with more fish in the bay this time of year than just about any time of the year, these fish will then prey on these pods of bait. And there are some other contributing factors, and I don't know that any one person can sum it up exactly the way it works. I mean, we're not underwater, with them. But the idea is that as the water cools, that also creates...
they start to rise.
Well, the fish are not as lethargic. So fish in the summer are fairly lethargic because the water temperature is so hot. As you get a cool down, just like most people,
like today.
As you get a cool down, there's some energy that people gain. So as you get a cool down in the water, which we're getting right now, you have an increased population of shrimp and bait fish moving through the bay, and these fish will feed on these giant pods of shrimp and bait fish. When they go to feed on the shrimp and the bait fish, the big pods, as they feed, the shrimp and bait fish will rise. As the shrimp and the bait fish rise to try to avoid the fish feeding on them, the birds, the seagulls, will see them. Then the seagulls will come down and try to eat the shrimp and the bait fish.
Now, when this happens, obviously a lot of birds can be in that area at one time. What kind of fish do you usually see in areas that the birds are working?
Well, most prevalent, debatably, most prevalent will be speckled trout. You also will have redfish. You can also have sand trout, Gulf trout. And David even said last year he was throwing under birds and was catching sheephead. So that's rather unusual. But the point is, you have different fish that will be working under the birds. And very importantly, there's going to be different size schools of fish, and I may have said that wrong, but what I'm trying to say is you may get on a bunch of birds working, and underneath the bait is a bunch of small trout, and that's fairly typical. So when you get into these pods of bait, the big set of birds that are working, hundreds of birds maybe working, diving in the water, you're going to want to analyze, did I just get onto a bunch of birds and fish and bait, and then the trout, let's say for example, are small trout, and only small trout. If you're only on small trout, then you've got to make a decision. You know, are you just on small trout? And we talked about this on different shows. We covered this a lot last week on our show. What measures are you going to take when you get on a giant school of small illegal trout? Are you going to try to sit there and pick some keepers out of there, or are you just going to move on to another school if you can find one?
So typically though, what would you recommend? They go, they see the birds, they head towards the birds, and then they try to fish the birds. And if they're small, they move on. If they're big, great, you just hit the jackpot.
Well, it's great, and what's exciting about this time of year is most of the anglers do not get tired of hitting different sets of birds. So you and I are going to go out this fall, and we're going to see some birds. If we drift into the birds and the bait working, the fish working, if we get onto some small fish, then I will immediately start panning, and I'll be looking for another set of birds to start working. So a lot of times when you see birds working, there's many more sets of birds and fish schooling and slicks popping up everywhere. Different areas. So you want to keep your eyes open.
So you were talking about drifting. You just mentioned when you drift towards the birds. So why don't we talk a little bit about how to fish when the birds are working?
This is very archaic, but at least for somebody that's starting new and fishing, can they see that, honey?
I'm sure they can.
Look on.
We're not there yet. Okay. We're delayed on Facebook Live, but I'm pretty sure. So go ahead, continue. Yes, they can see it.
All right. So when you see the bait and the birds working, and in this particular scenario, we have a wind like this. It's going to be blowing the vessel this way. I like to set my boat up what you call upwind, and the wind is going to now blow the vessel towards the bait and the birds. If, as you analyze the birds that are working, typically, but not always, the wind will be blowing your boat faster than the birds are moving. So that's the generic way that you're going to want to set up. The wind is going to blow you towards the bait and the birds. And what's very critical is, especially if you have two people or more, two anglers or more, you're going to want to try to cast on the outer edge of the birds, and somebody's going to cast on the inside of the birds. It's a general thought that the larger fish, this is not proven, but
in your experience,
most anglers that I've talked to, they just believe and they think in their experience that larger fish are on the outer edge. So I believe that. I don't know that that's true.
So when you're talking outer edge, like maybe you have 4 rods working out there, 2 on the outside, 2 on the inside.
Let's just take the scenario if 2 anglers are on the boat.
Right.
You're going to want to have 1 angler throwing on the outer edge of the birds working, and you're going to want to have 1 angler throwing into the middle. And you're going to want to identify what are the fish that are working the bait up, and then also, in this case, if it's trout or reds, you're going to want to identify, are these fish legally keepable? And if they are, did you catch them on the inside? Did you catch them on the outside? Or is the whole set just a giant, a big mess of keepers?
Does it matter what side?
No.
Does it have anything to do with
Well,
the wind or anything?
No, it can. You're going to want to work both edges. you're going to want to fish all 4 edges: the front edge, the righter quadrant, the left quadrant, the back of the quadrant, and then you're going to want to fish in the middle. You want to work that whole set over right there. And then after a good 6 or 7 casts, if you're not catching anything that's legal or you're not getting any bites, then you're going to want to reassess. Now, if somebody goes into birds that are working and they don't get any bites, it could be it just could be the bait that you're throwing. They may not be hitting lures. They may not be hitting shrimp. They may not be hitting live croakers. Maybe the lure you have on is too big. Maybe the shrimp that you have, well, normally a shrimp's not too big, but that's my opinion. But maybe maybe a croaker, they're just not going to hit a croaker. It's too big for them. So you're going to want to assess what bait you're using, and then you're going to want to also assess at what depth are you fishing. As we go into the fall, with the water temperature change, and the fish are feeding on the bait, and it's making that bait rise to the top of the water column, that doesn't mean that the fish are at the top. The fish could still be deep. So just don't make that mistake. There have been a few times I fished over the years where we've gotten in birds and the angler that's with me is fishing really shallow and they're not catching them, and then I've always said I like to fish deeper. I'm more of I like to fish more deep than not. So I'll normally be fishing the deepest on the boat. And then I may be catching and they're not. And then they will then change their bait presentation. If they have shrimp under a cork, they deepen their cork. If they're fishing with a croaker under a cork, they deepen the cork. If they're fishing with a lure, they change their presentation where the lure is deeper. So that's something that you do need to take into consideration.
So when we were talking about bait just now, does this time of year, is it just a good time of year to go out with a variety of bait, like have some shrimp, some croakers? When you see that the birds are working, what do you recommend?
Well, in the fall, you should always have a full tackle box.
Okay, so variety.
In the fall, I have a full tackle box. I have small hooks, big hooks, and I have, when I go, I'm taking shrimp and croakers if we have it, but then you also want, I'm a big believer in the fall that I like to have a couple spoons in the tackle box. I grew up fishing with spoons, and then like a strawberry Kelly Wiggler. But in any event, whatever it is you prefer. I mean, I'm old school. I don't know all the new terminology, but you're just going to want to have a little bit of everything, because when you get in those birds, you don't know what might be the bait that's going to produce the keepers. Because you're trying to catch keepers,
Yeah, so let's talk about the boat. Obviously, this one looks like a very simple boat, but
I have a simple boat. We have a simple boat.
We do have a simple boat. Any tips for the type of boat that you should be using for this type of fishing?
Some big tips here. Look, the problem that does exist with the birds is that when anglers see birds, a lot of times they get fixated on that one set of birds. As I've mentioned, if you see birds, a lot of times you're going to see birds working in other areas, and there could be a lot of set of birds. If you come up onto a set of birds working, and this is your boat, and you're drifting, so you would be more like me. I don't have a troll motor, and I have a T-top, so my boat drifts fast. If you see a boat closer to the birds working, and you're new to boating, new to fishing, or maybe you've been fishing for a very long time but you've never fished birds. If you see a boat, honey, if you see a boat in here, anywhere in here, and the wind is blowing like this, don't drift your boat right into that other boat, because that boat probably has a troll motor. And so for somebody that has a troll motor, I do not, but for somebody that does have a troll motor, that can be extremely offensive to them. They've purchased $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 troll motor, and they want to take advantage of it in that situation. That troll motor allows them to set in there. I can't do that in my boat. I cannot troll motor into birds working. I allow the wind to push me into the birds. Okay.
So you're not anchored.
I'm not anchored. I'm drifting into the birds. I'm drifting with the wind. The wind is pushing me into the birds. But if you see another boat in there, and they're in there tight to the birds working, they've used a troll motor to get in there, and don't drift right into them.
So what's the etiquette? Can you just like be on the other side of
The etiquette,
them? Like, what do you do?
The etiquette, that's a good question. The etiquette is don't drift right towards them. 2 boats, 3 boats can work a set of birds if they work the birds that will help each boat catch more fish. In the instance that somebody has a troll motor and they're here on the inside of these birds working, you need to be on the outer edge if you don't have a troll motor. Work on the outside edge and work with the other boat to corral the fish in, to hold the fish.
So basically, you're respecting personal space, kind of.
Yeah. Why are you laughing? That's
no,
not
I'm
funny.
not laughing. No, it's not funny.
It's not a joke.
It's like,
This is not a joke.
I'm using like everyday language. Like you're respecting other people's space.
But in this case, what I'm just illustrating is the boat without the troll motor, like me.
Right.
You use the wind, and you be cognizant that if this boat is in here and it's not moving, that means they got a troll motor. You know, they have a troll motor. Most likely they're not anchored. They have a troll motor because the birds are going to be moving. The birds that are working on that bait, the fish and the bait are going to be moving.
So let's go back to etiquette real quick, because I actually think this is such an interesting topic, especially when we've been out fishing and like we're hitting fish and then other people come up and they're like right next to us and it's so irritating when it happens. What is the etiquette? I mean, you've got one guy on a troll motor, maybe somebody else is there. How many boats should be fishing like an area of birds? Is there etiquette for that?
There's no number. I mean, there's no number that is talked about widely. It just
you know this. You know the people who've been on the boat catching fish. They see another boat come up and they're going, "Oh God."
No, it's just a number to me. In my experience, a couple boats can work some birds. A couple boats can work a set of birds, but it could be more maybe to other people. But if you have a boat that has a troll motor that's there with you and they're working those birds over real good, and you do not have a troll motor, you can still help them. But don't hurt both of you by going right through the middle and then blowing right up on a boat with a troll motor.
What if there's not a lot of wind?
If there is not a lot of wind, then what you would want to do is gently, just with the boat in gear, just underway, not propelling any faster than that, move towards the birds that are working and just get within casting range. Now just for what it's worth, there are people that have a legitimate viewpoint that they think it doesn't matter. They think if you're out in the middle of the bay and birds are working and you're sitting in 10 foot of water, they think it doesn't matter if you go in there and you just go right into the middle of the birds. I mean, there are people, honey, there are people that believe you can take your boat under the propulsion of your main motor and just go right into the middle and start casting. And there are instances where that works. But in general, people believe you should gently and as quiet as possible move into the birds.
And you would never anchor?
You could anchor rarely. Rarely could you anchor. So when birds are working and it's windy, that's not the best scenario. If it's windy and birds happen to be working, that's not very favorable conditions because birds are moving with the fish that are feeding on the bait. And normally they can move fairly fast. Now there is an idea from some that if the birds are moving quickly over the top of that bait, there are some people that believe in their experience that that's the sign of smaller fish. I can't say that I've experienced that, but there are a lot of people that believe that. If a pod of birds, bait, and fish are moving quickly and you can't keep up with them, there's a theory that those are typically smaller fish.
Now, obviously, we see birds working all year round. It just happens to be like they're more out there right now. So Is this something that typically our anglers will see over the next month, over the next 6 weeks? Does it have a lot to do with because winter is coming?
Next 2 months.
The next 2 months.
October, November, and
early December.
I mean, we've had Decembers where it's not very cold. So
yeah, 2 years ago.
I mean, there are places that you can have birds working in a big way even through December. So it's all about the weather, but definitely October, November, and part of December.
So that's one of the best tactics for anglers to be using right now when it comes to fishing.
That is absolutely one of the best things to be doing starting now, because the trout and the reds, the sand trout, the Gulf trout are giving themselves up they don't even know it. They're in a feeding frenzy, and then that allows you to quickly identify where they're at.
Okay, I've got one question on here. Josh wants to know about Moses Lake reds. So I'm guessing he wants to know if the fish are, or the birds are working over the reds in Moses Lake.
Well, Moses Lake is fantastic for redfish. I mean, there's people that I know, Joshua, that have caught reds in Moses Lake all throughout the fall and winter, almost every year. So.
Oh, come on, honey. That's rookie.
No, it's on. It's on Do Not Disturb.
Well, I thought mine was on the other day and the same thing happened.
That's weird. But yeah, Joshua, redfish in Moses Lake, fantastic spot. Absolutely fantastic.
Any other tips you can give people on fishing when the birds are working?
Well, there are a lot of other tips, but we don't want to keep it too long. A couple of other things is get a drift sock. So if you do not have a troll motor, I would strongly advise you look at buying a drift sock. It's a great purchase. It's something that won't cost you too much money, but it will really save you a lot of headaches. So a drift sock, it's not an anchor. A drift sock it's made of fabric. You throw it out, it's like a parachute. So you throw it into the water, it will slow your drift down. And so you would want to identify when the wind is blowing you towards the birds that are working, then you'd want to identify, is my boat moving too fast where I'm going to pass the birds up really quickly? If that's going to happen, you throw your drift sock out. That will slow you down. So get a drift sock.
Awesome. Let's talk about the weekend.
Now, did you say, hey, Kevin, hey, Chill?
We have shout outs.
Hey, Brian.
David, Brian, Don, Woody,
Brian,
Chill,
Woody,
Mark.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
Woody's been Woody, you're my longest fishing
friend.
partner.
And your longest, probably friends, too.
Longest friend and longest fishing partner. And Mark,
which is a triumph, by
Mark's
the way.
my roommate from LSU. Hey, Mark. Mark and I have caught a lot of redfish.
I love me some Mark and Michelle. Let's talk about the weekend, honey.
Okay. So the weather forecast is fantastic. 80s. They're talking about Friday, Saturday, Sunday, mid-upper 80s. And the wind, they have forecasts to be southeast and south. So those will be nice conditions. And then going in the next week, they have a front coming. So on that front, if you have not seen the episode with us talking about fishing the fronts,
it's from 2 weeks ago.
Rebecca, David, and I were talking about fishing the fronts. I would highly encourage you to watch that episode. Fishing the fronts can be fantastic. It's just you got to be able to pick your days. And some people, hey, I totally get it. I used to be in a situation where it was you work Monday through Saturday, and if you don't want to work Monday through Saturday, then you're fired. So if that's your situation, fishing the fronts can be hard for you. But if you have some flexibility and you can fish these fronts, then I would highly encourage you to do that. I'm excited about that because even though there are things I miss about the car business immensely, I worked with some great people. I loved the car business, but now I have some freedom that we can fish the fronts.
I can't wait to fish the fronts. It's been a while, so that sounds like a good plan.
Since Woody won't ever take me fishing, man.
Is that it? Is that the end?
That's it. Look, any questions, certainly
Message us.
send us a message on Facebook. And we're going to have this on our Galveston Bay Fishing Show.
On YouTube.
And Galveston Bay Fishing Show.
On Facebook. So I tagged Galveston Bay Fishing Show in our post. If you could click on that and like the Galveston Bay Fishing Show, that would be awesome. And then subscribe to our YouTube channel at the Galveston Bay Fishing Show. And we're starting to get some good activity on our YouTube channel, so that's pretty exciting.
Absolutely.
Awesome, guys.
And come see us at Eagle Point. It's going to be a great weekend.
We're going to have bait, right?
Plenty of bait.
Plenty of bait. Awesome. Have a good one, guys.